where we sat for hours and talked about creativity. I told him that Paris brought out my best ideas. There's something about this place that's excellent for thinking big thoughts. He agreed. We then walked around the city for hours. I continued to point out my favorite places to visit, but Steve was most interested in two things: all the creativity he sensed, and the architecture. "It's really neat to see so much creativity," he said. "So many people doing their thing, and evidently making a living at it." He talked at length about the historic Parisian writers and artists' salons, and then he added, "The computer is going to allow even more people to be creative." Around this time, Steve had started to regard the computer as the equivalent of a bicycle for our minds. "If you look at the fastest animals, human beings aren't among them," he said, "unless you give them a bicycle, and then they can win the race." The city's architecture fascinated him as well. He saw a simplicity and uniformity of design in the buildings, so many of them 7 or 8 stories tall, and made of similar yellow stone, exuding an elegance and consistency that instilled a sense of harmony in the brain. I was having a hard time thinking of Paris as having such simplicity and uniformity, but Steve's point was that you could parachute anywhere into the city and realize you were nowhere but Paris. There aren't many cities where you can do that, he pointed out. The architecture here creates a unique signature for the entire city. That Parisian simplicity was something he wanted Apple to emulate. After walking and talking all day, we again sat down at a cafe. I ordered a cappuccino, and Steve ordered tea. He was a big tea drinker. I asked him how he thought Apple was doing, and he confessed he was worried the company wasn't being innovative enough. He wasn't happy with the current products, and he wondered what the next wave of computers was going to look like, and what new innovations would come along. "How in the world do you figure out what the next big thing is?" he asked. I replied, "You have to be aware of everything that's going on, and be open to adapting to it. In your case, what you want to do is discover what people like about the latest developments on the mainframes, where money is no object, and then figure out a way to make these things cheap and accessible." "Well, that's what I'm doing," he responded, telling me that this was what the then state-of-the-art Apple II was about, making computer power accessible. I agreed. In many ways, the Apple II was more powerful than an IBM mainframe from 10 years earlier. Steve and I talked about many other computer-related subjects, from processing speed to 16-bit architecture. Most of all, we tried to predict the future. Steve was totally preoccupied with the evolution of Apple products. How do we keep ahead of the game? He wanted to know. You've got to figure out how to put yourself in the future and ask, what do I want my computer to do? I said, what are the things that it can't do now that I really want it to do? He nodded. We're trying to do that. It's difficult, though. It's hard to find people who can think that way. He was also convinced that his competitors were constantly copying Apple. There are parasites all over the computer world, ready to take whatever we come up with, he fumed. I told him that imitation was a form of compliment, which he understood. Then he sighed. Everybody expects me to come up with all the ideas. That's not how you build a strong company. He went on to explain that he needed to generate more creativity within the company. We both recognized that innovation was the key to the future, and innovation was going to have to come from the brilliance of all the people at Apple, not just the person on top. What I realized then was that the original Steve Jobs believed he had to find his own next Steve Jobs. We spent the rest of the day talking about issues related to creativity. At the time, I came up with dozens of suggestions for Steve, many of which he wrote down. I kept thinking that I should write them down too, and publish them in a book. Now, 3 decades later, I have. One of the ideas Steve and I addressed was the concept of rules. Neither of us felt that creativity could thrive in the presence of strict ones. Thus, the book you're reading contains no rules. Instead,